fellow Minecrafters. Gearsaw Studios here. Today I'm going to show you how to build a futuristic house in Minecraft. Since futuristic houses are some of the coolest builds you can do in Minecraft, in my opinion. So, before I begin, remember, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. So, with that, onto the tutorial. So, before we begin building, of course, you need a palette. So, I've laid out a list of blocks that could be used, but not all of these are going to be used, and there's certainly more that could be used. So, concrete, quartz, some woods, and stained glasses, along with some sea lanterns, are often the main blocks you'll use when building futuristic. However, some extra things can be added, such as calcite. So, now that we have a palette, it's time to begin building. To begin building, what you'll need is a frame. Since futuristic is often very geometric in its shapes, it doesn't have many curvy lines. So sometimes it can get confused with modern buildings, which often have seamless lines. However, futuristic has tons and tons of shapes, such as cubes and rectangles, and sometimes it has curves, but you can usually define what's the one you're looking for by the borders. So this is going to be futuristic. So what you want to do is lay out frames. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's usually what makes a good build, is just some variation in the shapes. So I'm going to make a very varied shape house, and it's going to also extend into the sea a little. I'll focus on the sea portion later. So I'm building a shape, and you have to connect it up. And now I have some shape for my build. So it might have to go through a couple of iterations, so this is likely not what I'm going to use at the building stage. After a significant amount of redesigning, I've decided this is going to be the look I'm going to use. The little upwards points represent where the frame is going to connect, because futuristic builds have hard outlines, which can also be seen as a frame. So I'm going to use it as a frame. The little up parts are just used for that, and the little concrete pieces are the entry points. So now that this is done, it's time to move upward and create a vertical frame. What you'll want to do is just extend upwards and make sure that there's a decent amount of room on the first floor. This is going to be the height of the second floor, which will also be the floor of the first floor. Just connect these together so you now have a house. With the lower floor's frame done, now it's time to move on to the upper floor. So with the upper floor, what you want to do is to make a balcony. Balconies are just nice additions and provide a bit more shape to a building rather than keeping it the shape it was on the first floor. So if you want to make a balcony, connect your frame at a spot that would normally just not have one, and then proceed as normal. You can create multiple balconies, and sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. So don't try to push multiple balconies. And once you map out all your balconies, just start building like normal, and make sure that it is the same height. If you don't have the same height, then some stuff will look very, very strange. Now with a frame, the building process can start, building. What you'll want to do is go down to the first floor where you have this gray concrete outline and replace it to a different block. I'm choosing light gray concrete, so this is for the walls. The thing is, when you have the same frame color as the walls, what happens is everything looks kind of blocky and thick, so it just doesn't work well. However, if you have a different color, then it works a lot better. So just replace all the blocks that are on the very bottom, but do not replace the frame itself. Because if you replace the frame itself, then the frame kind of loses its shape and just stops looking good. So just extend everything to a different block. And another tip, it should be brighter than your frame, which means that if you choose black to outline a gray frame, that's not going to work well at all. Now with that, build the second block on the second floor with the same block, since this is also going to be walls. Also, make sure you know where your doors are going to be, because if you place them down where doors are supposed to be, you're just wasting a little bit of time. However, there's no shame in not marking where your doors are, because if you don't mark where your doors are and you just aren't sure, it's better to move on with other pieces of the build if you're stuck. Now with this done, we can actually start building. Now with the frames and the wall lining done, it's time for the floor. I'm going to make a combination of the tops of beehives and normal wood. However, make sure your beehives are all facing the same direction so it doesn't disrupt the pattern. If you have only one block for the floor, it can also look a bit flat if you don't add other things such as carpets. And I am going to add carpets, but it's just a neat detail to have beehives lining the floor along with the normal oak planks, because the beehives act as an alternate texture. And alternate textures are always good. And then once you're done with the floor lining, if you're doing this, then replace the rest with oak planks. With the floors done, now it's time to section out the house, because knowing what is going to be stuff and what's going to be different stuff is very important. So if you want to have a kitchen and a living room and a bathroom, you'll know where to put each, because sometimes they have different floors, and also you don't want a bathroom or a kitchen expanding right into your couch. So make sure to map out what areas which. So for a quick example of some mapping, I'm just going to place down some smooth stone here, and I'm going to move it back a block because I think that looks better. And this is going to be the kitchen, which means it will have a different floor, since wood and kitchens where stuff is cooked often results in fires. So make sure that there isn't flammable objects in the kitchen, but that's not particularly necessary because this isn't real life. This is a block game. Make sure what's what, and then in the kitchen, make sure to replace your floor to non-flammable things as mentioned earlier. You don't have to replace stuff that's hidden under objects, such as these oak planks and beehives are hidden under smooth stone. Now with the calcite floor, I'm going to replace this piece with more frame, and now we have a designated kitchen. And you can do stuff in your kitchen area, such as placing down your furnaces. So that's what we're going to do now. In order to do kitchens, make sure to just, grab furnaces. So smokers are the best because you aren't going to do much smelting in a futuristic house if you're just a normal modern day resident. But if you're in survival, it might be worth adding normal furnaces and blast furnaces. But smokers are just the best option, and make sure to have some countertops, which can just be smooth stone. Cabinets are also a great addition, but we'll get into that on the next clip. Now that we have a kitchen and some countertops, I'm going to change the countertops because the little bar right here shouldn't be the same block in my opinion. So just grab some stairs, and it might take a moment to decide what you want, but I think polished diorite might fit the situation. And now we have a countertop. After some small changes to the countertop that involves using full blocks, it's time to add some cabinets for storage, such as plates. Make sure that they're close to the ceiling or are touching the ceiling, because that just makes more sense, because you wouldn't want to have it directly in your way, which just gives you more counter space. I'm going to use beehives, but you can use barrels depending on what the floor of your house is. And it might also be worth noting what your floor looks like if you have an outline. So make sure to connect your outline if you've noticed that. Now that this is done, you can add a window. Windows are just nice. They provide some natural lighting, along with providing a view to the outside. So you don't have to do much for a window, but I might need to make some changes to this window, so don't expect this to be final. Now with this window in, I decided to make a change to the build. And if you ever feel like you need to make a change, remember, do it early on before you decide to try it later. It will be less work on you. I feel like cyan terracotta would work better here, and I think it does. So just gotta replace everything here, and because this is early on, it's much less work than if the entire house was done. So make sure to test out any changes you feel like that need to be made. Now with that change out of the way, I can finish this window. Make sure that the window also has a frame, but make sure it's different from other blocks in the build. And now I have a neat frame for this window, which of course is subject to change at any time because that's how building works. You develop ideas as you go, or you set out one big plan, which can change. Now with that out of the way, add some more cabinets. The more cabinets, the better. And you can also have varying height levels throughout your builds. So sometimes it can be low, sometimes it can be large. It can just be whatever, but make sure not to keep it too short. I'm going to reduce this height by a block, so that way the cabinets aren't excessively high up because, short people. Now with that, we can add more windows because the kitchen is nearly done. Now with all the walls done, it's time for the finishing touches of the kitchen. Make sure to add some sort of vent or stuff from the stove, which is the smokers, can escape the house because built up gases can sometimes make breathing difficult, and you don't want anyone trying to cook in here to suffocate. So it doesn't have to extend all the way up, and you could make it go all the way up, and you could also change blocks, but I'm just going to end it on the floor of this. Now with the kitchen done, since it has a lower ceiling than the other rooms, make sure to add an actual ceiling. Doesn't have to be anything, and remember, it's not going to be viewed from the top, since the top is going to have a normal floor. Make sure to add lights there, because if this room is dark, well, that's just not a good room. So experiment with some lighting. I think this looks good, and now I'm just going to finish it off and fill it all in. Now I have a finished kitchen for, cooking. However, this is only a small part of the house, which means that not a lot is actually done. With one room done, it's time to put in the doors for the house. Since there's going to be a lot of doors, you'll have to figure out what positions look best. And don't forget, you can also experiment with the rotation of doors and what kinds of doors you use. However, in my opinion, dark oak just looks the best for almost every situation. So remember to give it a try whenever you're stuck on what door to use. Now with that done, we can move on to the walls. The walls are going to be like the kitchen. They're pretty simple, and adding sea lanterns onto the corners are also good ways to light up the house with a little effort in where to put your stuff. Just make the base stuff white, make the borders of the windows light gray concrete, and everything else can be cyan terracotta. Or you could experiment with cyan terracotta replacing the white gray concrete, which, yet again, I think actually looks better despite it making everything a little more flat. So I'm going to experiment with that more often, and I'm going to build more walls. Now with the front door done and some of the walls filled in, it's time to fill in the rest, which isn't very hard at all. What you'll want to do is place down glass and surround it in another block and fill the rest with white concrete. Of course, some variance is good, but sometimes it's not good. So it's up to you depending on each situation. Placing down glass, and glass panes can be difficult to place sometimes, but don't let that discourage you. Line it, add sea lanterns sometimes, and add white. And just repeat this for pretty much everything. It's a very simple process, and some windows will need special attention, such as the living room windows, which are significantly larger than the other windows of the house, which means that they're going to be a different window kind than the other stuff. Of course, sea lanterns aren't necessary on everything, but futuristic builds have very, very good lighting. So remember to keep that in mind, that everything should be very well lit up unless it's supposed to be abandoned, in which sea lanterns is probably not the best option. With the first 4 windows and walls done, it's time for the living room. The living room is a bit of a difficult one, because of course you're going to have to install a TV, because that's basically what's in every modern day and futuristic house. So just start placing down a window. Try to make it big, but not too big, because a TV is still rather necessary to make a good looking build. And a more realistic. We have this window done. Now this window can be a bit larger since this is not going to be the TV side. But remember not to let the window encompass the big walls completely, unless it is a curved wall, which kind of changes the rules of windows a little in futuristic builds. Also, remember to experiment with different heights on windows, because sometimes it just looks better. This tall window is just a nice viewpoint, and it's a bit large, yeah, but it can also look pretty good. Of course, as with every other build, stuff is subject to change, because you might change your mind, I might change my mind, and sometimes criticism is a good way to change someone's mind. Now with the walls done, it's time to fill out this entire area. I'm going to basically consider the living room. So that means filling in some of the walls as well, because windows don't need to be everywhere, and paintings are actually a good way to decorate stuff. So it might be worth it to punch out some of your windows and replace them with just plain white concrete walls, and place down some paintings. It can take a couple tries to get good paintings, and some paintings just don't work. But I'm going to use that one. And you can use blocks to help change what painting type you'll get. Remember not to click too fast when trying to replace a painting, because sometimes that just replaces stuff, and that's just not the best. Also, to make sure that you are using all the stuff to its fullest potential if you want to, such as this support beam right here could be used to increase the size of the wall. However, remember to limit sizes for paintings. Now with that painting, we can fully decorate the rest of the living room. Stairs can be used as great couches. I believe that quartz are just some of the best to use, especially smooth quartz, because that provides just a nice white couch. But normal quartz might be better because it has more of a cushion look. Also, make sure that there's room for a TV, and you can add multiple couches. Sometimes chairs are good, and you might want to shrink the size of couches so that way there's room for chairs. Because chairs are, well, amazing. Sometimes you don't want to sit on a couch when you do stuff. Now it's time for this, and this is going to be the TV. I'm not entirely sure what to do with the TV yet, so just making a TV stand is a good place to start. Slabs are your friend while doing this. That's one thing I can say. And paintings are another good way to make a TV. But it's just going to take trial and error to create a TV, and you might want to remove windows. So I'm just going to experiment a little on mine. I designed a quick TV stand right here involving slabs. However, I've decided that a bee nest, well, beehive, will be good for a TV stand because storage, just more storage, and that could also be where the remote is kept. But remember, if you're using too many of these, bees might get inside if you leave the door open or you're building in a biome with bees. So remember to watch out for that. Now with this actual TV right here, I've just made a small thing, and I'm going to place a painting on it. Remember not to make too big or too small of a painting, and that's the one I wanted. With the one I wanted, I'm also going to change the TV stand a little, because I feel like it's necessary. And that's often a big part of building. What feels necessary might also be what makes your build look good. But it can also be a curse, because that might also be what your build does not need. With this TV right here, of course, I'm going to maybe change it so that way it looks better. Along with that, you could possibly replace one of these with a more futuristic block to make it a gaming console, which is just another suggestion I could think of. Now, a TV is in here, and the living room is a bit more complete. A nice block for a gaming console is a backwards facing observer, because there's that little red inactive light that could also be seen as a gaming console. Also, since I'm also still learning and experimenting through building, I've discovered that blast furnaces facing backwards make good countertops. Much better than these diorite blocks. So you could also change that, and a bit more, well, better looking kitchen. But you might decide that this doesn't look good and change it back, and everything can just be left up to interpretation. It's up to you what you like and what you don't like. Now, it's time to add a carpet to this living room, and I'm going to use a similar carpet to the other tutorial I made, the enchanting room. It's going to be blue with a white outline, because I just like that. Along with that, I'm going to use blue carpet, but you could also replace the floor with blue wool in order to create a bit more detailed carpet, which I think I'm going to do. This trick might not work on the second floor if you don't have double thick floors, because if you use this on a second floor without double thick, the wool will be the ceiling of the first floor. So keep that in mind if you're doing this on a second floor. Now, this living room is done, which means I'll have to focus on this stairwell right here. Make sure to connect up stuff, just so it looks more complete, and fill in this wall if you have a stairwell right here. You might want to have a stairwell as part of the actual living room. It's just up to you, as with everything. Now with this, it's time to work on stairs, so that way you can access the second floor. With this small stair area, you kind of have to conserve space, but since there's enough space to put a railing if you really try, I'm going to try to put a railing in here. So just start it out, and make sure to have an underside to your stairs, because that just makes it look all much better. And make sure at corners it doesn't go up, because you don't want to break whoever's ankles are going up the stairs. It can be a little inefficient, but trust me, it will look better than just a normal staircase. Now with that done, you can create a little floor like the other area down here, but first you'll probably want to make a railing. Railings can be hard to start in small areas, so you might have to start off without a railing or an elevated railing, like this. So I'm having a little trouble doing a railing. You don't have to do this, I'm just trying to make this look good. But it doesn't seem like it will work out, so unfortunately I'm going to have no railing. But that also means it's time for the floor. The floor can be the same as the first floor because this looks just fine as a ceiling. And make sure that it looks okay. And if you're using beehives like I am, also make sure that the side that can receive bees is not facing outward, because it would be a little unpleasant to have a bee pop out in your face after you walk down the stairs. But now it's time for the second story. With the second floor being constructed, you'll want to make sure that the doors you have for balconies are also lined like the other doors in the house. I'm going to add sea lanterns on each of them just to improve their look. And make sure that you map out where the floors and the doors are going to be. Since this is going to be a separate room, I'm going to make sure that the floor ends here by laying out some gray concrete. And make sure that the floor continues wherever. It's also a nice detail since you can see the upper floor from down here to keep the bees facing the same direction if you're using this block. Which you should. It's an amazing block, and it's not too expensive if you have a bee nest to farm, or you have a honey producer farm like one of my other videos showcases. It can be a little tough, but don't give up if you have small areas. Sometimes you'll just need to not have the pattern extend into there. I want this area to also be a bathroom, which means I'll have to change the frame a little. Just going to make this extend, and I'm also going to change the block to calcite because wooden floors for bathrooms is also not the greatest idea, similar to kitchens having wooden floors. But this also means you can see it from the other floor, which you might have to do something about it, just saying. Now, just extend the frame and make sure to add some curves, like here. Curves just provide a bit more detailing into the build and break up the symmetry. Now the frame is a bit more complete, and we have room for a bathroom. I'm going to make this area a computer desk. So, place down a block, then have a chair in the form of stairs, and you'll have to add a keyboard, which I have a neat trick for, but it also means that you'll have to shorten the roof. In order to reduce the height of this part without it becoming unnatural, try to make it lined with stairs. Since I'm using gray concrete for a frame, the closest block that I can think of right now is polished deep slate. Hopefully it will look close enough, and if it doesn't, I might have to change it, or I might have to forfeit this neat trick. But considering there's bathroom floor right there, it's probably going to be just it looking unnatural. Now I have that, and It looks decent. It's not the best, but it's the best I can think of right now, which also means I can change it later. Now, my little trick is using an armor stand. Armor stands can be used to make a keyboard, which also means I'm going to have to push this chair back one block, since there also needs to be room for an actual computer screen, which is simple, just a painting. Now, place down an armor stand, and this can get a little expensive. Give it a chainmail helmet. This acts as a keyboard, and it's a little crooked, but that makes it all the better, making it a bit more natural. Now, get a piston, which I can't seem to spell. Now, get the line so that way I can push a block. And I'm going to use a smooth quartz block for what it's going to be. Then get a redstone torch or a block or a lever. And now I have a neat keyboard. It does go into the wall a little, but it looks pretty decent, so I'm going to keep it. And since this is also going to be a window, it won't be an issue at all. Now, just place down some gray concrete and get a painting. And now we have a computer screen and a keyboard. So, a computer has now been installed into this building, which makes it a bit more cozy. Because I'm using glass panes for this build, it also means I have to change this computer screen real quick. So, just place down a stairs so that way it doesn't connect. Get your panes and start doing the walls again. It should be easier now that you know what you're doing, because the first four is kind of used for experimenting, and the second four, you know what you're doing. Sea lanterns still work as great lighting, and lighting should be tested soon because there's going to be a ceiling onto this floor, which is the greatest test for if a room is well lit, nighttime, and an enclosed room. We are going to focus on the balconies later, and I'm just going to build out the windows off camera. With completed walls in, the curves on this building provide a unique challenge that most other builders don't have to face when they build. However, there's a pretty easy solution for these curves. I decided to frame it around the flat sides rather than the corner because it looks more natural. And the trick is to these corners is that you can just add glass, and with this glass in, now you can just line it and you have another window in. So it's just a win-win. Better shape, more lighting, more windows. Just the perfect thing. Now with the curves handled, it's time to handle this wall, which shouldn't be very hard. All you have to do is just do what we've been doing this entire time. I'm not going to add sea lanterns on this one. And this is going to be the only bedroom of the house. This isn't meant to be a large house, it's just meant to be a small, nice, futuristic house. The balconies also mean that you're going to have to fill in some area. The balconies are pretty simple to use. You just go out through this door and you hang out. Glass panes make a good railing, better than fences, and you might want to line the top, but I'm not going to do that. And this corner is a good place to add a sea lantern to break stuff up. Now, you can install some lighting, and this lighting will also apply to the floors below, so make sure you use it correctly. I'm just going to use it at these two corners, and I'm just going to put this through the top, and adding chairs is a good thing to do on a balcony. Chairs are just stairs, and since these aren't going to be couches, it can be normal quartz, which saves a step in the process. However, you might want to have a table, and putting on a table and flower pots without flowers or with flowers work. I'm going to put a flower in. I'll use the cornflower. And we have a balcony finished. Now the build is nearing completion with the balcony finished, because when the other balcony is finished, it will only be the bedroom and bathroom left to finish. Other balcony just behaves the same way as the balcony over there. Table in the middle. And this one I'm going to leave unpotted, because this could act as a cup for a drink, because looking over this view, you might get thirsty. So, just a neat addition you can add. Now with that done, it's time for the bedroom, which is going to be the final main room besides the bathroom. The bedroom for here is kind of small, so it's only going to be one bed. And since this is a futuristic house, you can have access to whatever dye you want. And you can completely encase it, but I'm not going to do that. Add a flower pot. And I'm going to add a flowering azalea into it. And I can just block this, and these act as dressers. And I believe this is this room completely finished, besides the ceiling, which before I handle the roof, I'm going to add a redstone torch for just a small amount of lighting, because you don't want a bedroom to be too bright, because people sleep in there. It's hard to sleep when there's bright lights everywhere. Now with that, you might have to adjust the roof because it's time for installing a ceiling. Ceilings are relatively simple. You might have to disobey the lighting I just laid out over there. And they're just simple. The main challenge is just putting in actual lighting. But that doesn't, it's just not hard to do. And gotta lay down all the white concrete. And a trick I've learned is lay down all the concrete and figure out the lights when there's an actual roof in. It might be easier to do from the inside because you can see what needs lighting and what doesn't. So this corner could use some lighting, and I could extend it in order to connect there, and add some cyan terracotta there, and just breaking up some of the plainness. It's better to see what it looks like on the inside rather than the outside, because if you prioritize the inside, the outside will just develop its own lines because of it. Over here, just standard ceiling. Here could be just all lights, and this place is coming all together, which is making the roof look a little strange, but it also makes the roof look very good at the same time. And that means the only room for the interior left is this bathroom. Bathrooms are pretty simple though. You can do two things for a toilet: cauldrons or stairs. I'm going to go the cauldron route. And you'll need a shower and a sink. Sinks can also be cauldrons, which is pretty simple. A lever could act as a faucet. It's a little hard to do bathrooms, in my opinion, because I don't do them often. And some smooth stone here to act as a barrier for the shower. And for the floor of the shower, I'm going to do 1 block of dark prismarine, so that way the water doesn't get stuck anywhere. And now a shower, a toilet, a faucet, and that means a complete bathroom. Now, there's only one final thing for the house, and that's the roof. The roof isn't usually accessed though, so just some end rods to act as internet cables and satellites can work. Possibly you could add, say, a lightning rod. but I don't have many ideas for a roof. So you don't have to do much for a roof unless you have some amazing ideas. And if you have any amazing ideas, feel free to share them in the comments. But I'm going to remove this lightning rod. And with that, I believe this house is completely finished. With this completed house, it's time to check it out at nighttime, so that way you can see if the lighting is good. So it looks pretty good from the outside, looking very futuristic. And everything seems to be finished. And taking a look from the inside, the little fort extension on the upper side is looking a little natural. It's still a bit strange, but it's good enough. The kitchen's looking pretty good. The living room has a TV and all. And the stairwell has a nice, stairs. Second floor has a very cool keyboard. And a bathroom. Has 2 balconies, which is just amazing. And it also has a sleepable bed. So this entire house is all wrapped up and it's livable, which is another key point in living in a house. And because this house is completed, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And this is also the longest video yet, coming in around 45 minutes in my editor, so I'd really appreciate it this time, because it took a lot of effort to build this house, considering all the little details in it. So, with that, take care, enjoy a futuristic house, Gearsaw